to Media3. It's just shy of 10 years since an obscure Algerian activist called Ahmed Zaoui landed in Auckland and asked for shelter as a refugee. What happened subsequently told us as much about New Zealand and its institutions as it did about Zaoui himself. It's a story examined in journalist Selwyn Manning's new documentary, Behind the Shroud, Why Ahmed Zaoui Was Set Free.
We never met one person who cast any doubt on the fundamental nature of his story in New Zealand, of who he was, including people who weren't necessarily weren't members of his party. And that, of course, included the famous Colonel Samraoui, who had been an agent of the Algerian government and whose job was to track people like Ahmed Zaoui down and actually dispose of them.
If the allegation can't be put for rebuttal, but is nonetheless relied on, it becomes very difficult to defend.
It seems to me that on the one hand, the intelligence services, and particularly the SIS, believe that the masses are asses and hence can simply not handle anything by the way of general knowledge information about matters of national security interest. On the other hand, it appears to loathe Parliament for its very existence.
Agents are a bit of a different breed. I mean, they're civilians for a start. Police are used to doing these things. So maybe it just simply works a bit easy. It might be, here's someone say, well, actually, we're happy for you to do it because you're better at doing it than we are.
And Selwyn Manning is with me now. Welcome, Selwyn.
Thank you.
Now, Zaoui's story does seem like history now. What is its contemporary relevance?
I think it is because it's relevant today because the story basically stopped in 2007, suddenly after years of our government saying that this guy was a security risk to our national security. Then all of a sudden we heard that there were secret hearings going on and the man was set free. His family were invited to join him in New Zealand. Those unanswered questions until now just have not been available to
and the rest of us all just moved on, but the story hadn't, in your view, had not been concluded. It
hadn't been concluded, and I'd invested some time really developing contacts inside both the Zaoui defence camp, but also from other experts like Professor George Joffe from Cambridge University in the UK, but most significantly Lieutenant Colonel Mohamed Samraoui, who was the Algerian regime's chief intelligence officer in North Europe during those years when the Zaoui FIS exile groups were basically hunted down and disposed of. Samraoui was significant from a journalist point of view, Russell, because he was the one that was basically given the order to decide who would be assassinated and who would have a black flag operation put on them to discredit them. Zaoui was not important enough from the regime's point of view to get out of the road to assassinate, but Samraoui said he certainly was an irritant, and so therefore they set about to discredit his reputation.
Samraoui seems like a hell of a get, because as far as I can see, that there's no, why would he have an interest in even talking to you?
Got on to Samraoui when he was brought over in 2007 for the secret hearings that took place. Those hearings where the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security looked into whether or not the SIS was correct in issuing a security risk certificate against Zaoui. Mohamed Samraoui was a secret witness in those hearings, and I was lucky enough to be able to start to cultivate Samraoui as a contact and to use, that contact development techniques as journalists that we do over time. And by 2010, I had gone up to Germany and basically sat with Samraoui over a matter of days and checked the backstory. What was his testimony on this? What was his testimony on that? And at the time, he was actually presenting. He had defected from the Algerian regime and he was preparing to give testimony to an assassination case relating to a man called Ali Massili, who was murdered in Saint-Michel Boulevard in Paris.
So what's the key piece of information that this adds? I mean, how has it changed the story from what we understand of it, which was basically the SIS got a little excited and he was not the terrorist that they thought him to be?
What it does is it fills in those gaps from the point of view of Samraoui saying, this is what the Algerian regime did. This is why we did it. This is how we did it. This is the effect that it had on this guy and his group. It shut them down. And he said, really, he was surprised at how New Zealand had not developed its external assessments relating to the intelligence that France, Belgium and Switzerland had put through the New Zealand filter. Really, I think the Labour government, I think most of us would consider a Labour-led government to be perhaps one of the more interested in human rights. So how did this happen under its watch? This goes some way to explaining that.
The irony being that you got the Algerian strongman and you did not. Did you try and get Helen Clark? Because
yeah, we tried over the course of the 2000s, like many journalists did. They were in shutdown. I think there was a demonstration where you get strong leaders that make a call on a particular issue. The Prime Minister, Helen Clark, at that time made a call on this on the basis of the information that came not only from the SIS but also its External Assessments Bureau. In my view, and looking back and following this case all of those years, she was let down. And I think what it does, and the relevance of bringing this documentary up in this day and age, is really once again to look at whether or not New Zealand's public and national interest has been satisfied, and are our external assessments actually satisfying our interests in issues of refugee status and entry to our country.
You've made this documentary as part of your master's thesis. You've got it made. How do you get it to an audience?
Yeah, that's the challenge. It was submitted to the New Zealand Documentary Film Festival. It didn't make it there, and only a handful of New Zealand documentaries did. Every one of them, I think, should have been there. But out of 50 showings, there was only around about 5 to 10, 12 of New Zealand ones. I'm not criticising them for that, they have to make their calls. But there are New Zealand stories out there that need to be told and need to be put, in my view, before the public. This is one of them. It's of a satisfactory production quality to be able to put out there, to distribute, going now with public screening licences to community groups between 10 people to 50, giving them access to this documentary where they can, perhaps their groups can actually benefit financially from selling tickets as well.
And just finally and briefly, your subject himself, Ahmed Zaoui, he's working in a food hall around the corner from here.
Making kebabs.
Yeah, should things have turned out better for him?
They should have turned out better, and I think he harbours a hope that he would be able to one day go and revisit Algeria to meet with his old school friends and his extended family. The sad thing is in this that if you take the advice of Mohamed Samraoui, it would be worth his life to do so.
Well, we hope he doesn't then in that case. Thank you, Selwyn Manning. Coming up next, the beautiful image and its value.